Hit the ground running with the most revolutionary personal training program ever developed. The National Academy of Sports Medicine, the #1 choice for fitness professionals, makes it quick, easy, and affordable to learn on the go. Be your own boss and start transforming lives from 9 to 99 with the all-new certified personal training program only at nasm.org.
What's going on, everybody? Tony Embler right here, Master Instructor with NASM, and I'm extremely excited and honored to be joined by my colleague and buddy, Mr. Andre Adams. How you doing today?
Doing great, Tony. Happy to be here.
I'm really happy for you to be here. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar series, Physique 101. And this is our first episode, first installment in the series. I've been really looking forward to this and sharing this information with everyone. In this particular episode, we're going to talk about physique fundamentals, and that'll help set the stage for subsequent episodes in the series, which we'll highlight and preview a little bit as we get going today. All right, so what are we going to cover? Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about. We'll get going with some intros. I really want you guys to get to know Andre and really get an appreciation for his level of experience and expertise as it relates to physique development, body composition, change, and bodybuilding. Then we'll talk a little bit about the series overall and what we plan on getting into over the next few months, weeks and into the coming months as it relates to physique development. So we'll highlight what's to come. Hopefully that'll get you excited and looking forward to our subsequent episodes. And then we'll spend the majority of our time getting into the fundamentals of physique. And there are a lot of different facets and components associated with physique development, training to optimize your physique and body composition that I don't know if people fully appreciate or realize. And so I want Andre to get into that for us and really set the stage for what's to come down the line. And then we will spend a few minutes addressing some questions that we've already received about the topic, and then we'll preview our next episode before wrapping things up. So, Andre, how's that sound to you?
Sounds good to me, Tony.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's find out more about you. So,
sure.
Andre,
a little bit about my backstory here. I've been in this physique and bodybuilding space going on 8 years now. I started out as a power lifter before that, and just kind of fell in love with the sport. You know, I turned pro in the IFBB and the physique divisions back in 2013 at the NPC Nationals, and since then, I actually went on, got my NASM CPT and a lot of the other disciplines, but I was fascinated with the amount of information and science that I was able to learn and apply not only to myself, but to some of my clients that I coach as well. So I actually took that all the way through the NASM Master's Program, which has been sort of the foundation of some of my own training. So those are things that I'd love to talk about. And as Tony mentioned, looking at some of those most common objectives for improving your body composition. What are those goal setting and the strategies for mindset, creating those adaptations for bodybuilding? What does that look like? I will say, just through firsthand experience, it is quite a bit different than how we normally would think about dieting and training. Right? There's a lot of specifics and other considerations that go into it. So definitely happy to speak about that and use some of my expertise that I've picked up along the way.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, obviously we'll provide your contact information, social media information at the end, so you can learn more about Andre if you don't follow him already. But yeah, I'm excited for you to share all that with us. And I think too, as we get through this series, one of the things you and I have discussed is, we can approach this from two perspectives. One is, if you're an athlete yourself and you're looking to train to improve your physique and achieve specific goals, but then also if you're looking to coach others, we'll be addressing what you need to do in order to accomplish that. Obviously, you've done both. You've competed at the highest level in the sport, and you've coached people to compete as well. So I think that's what'll be great about the series is that we can approach it from both perspectives and really shed some light on what all this means and what it takes to be able to accomplish those physique-oriented goals.
Absolutely. And even to add to that, right, for you guys that are out there just looking to improve your body composition, maybe you're in a transformation challenge or just looking to get in shape for, your beach body this summer, all the same principles will apply to that same kind of training as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So, before we let Andre do his thing and get into some of the finer elements of physique and the fundamentals of physique, I want to talk a little bit about why we're doing this. NASM historically, if you kind of look at the images on the slide, we focus on sports performance training. We focus on fitness, improving fitness and wellness. We're the largest personal training certification in the world, and fitness is the primary space for that. And then corrective exercise is also another big aspect of what we do and the education that we provide. And so, as I've mentioned in other webinars and podcasts that we've had, one of my objectives and what I really want to highlight is how versatile and adaptable the systems and principles that the NASM education and OPT and corrective exercise training models are to a variety of different populations with a variety of different goals. And so I'm really excited to dive into this because I think the majority of people who are exercising have aesthetic goals. I don't think it's uncommon. Obviously, people want to feel better and they want to be able to do specific things physically and functionally. But I think we'd be remiss to not address the aesthetic piece. And I think a lot of people exercise because they want to improve their aesthetics, which then translates to a variety of other things, improve self-confidence and awareness, and that can translate into other aspects of their life. And so for me, like I said, I'm excited because I want to be able to obviously have you share your knowledge and expertise about developing a physique, an optimal physique, whatever that might be for depending on the person, and leveraging the principles and the science behind that, as well as the principles and the science behind the OPT model and corrective exercise. And now we can blend those to be able to help people achieve their best body. And so that's really why we're doing this, is we traditionally haven't focused on this a whole lot as an organization in terms of how do you use the OPT model? How do you use the nutrition education? How do you use corrective exercise for individuals who are looking to improve their aesthetics and have these very specific physique-oriented goals? And so that's what I'm excited about. So that's just wanted to highlight that. Why are we focusing on this? It's a big deal. It's what a lot of people like to focus on and why they exercise. And so we need to address it. How do we adapt our training? How do we adapt our systems and our model to this type of goal or this type of adaptation?
That's exactly it. I mean, when you think about the foundation of our NASM, our OPT model, right? To Tony's point, we're typically science-based, focusing on how to create specific adaptations to get a result, and being able to leverage those facts and those adaptations to get a physique result, right? A specific aesthetic look. That's pretty cool stuff, So I think tying it all back into that sweet science that NASM is renowned for is going to be one of the highlights of this series.
No doubt. All right. Well, let's get into the fundamentals of physique. So there's a lot to unpack here, obviously.
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Now Greg Esposito, our awesome producer, he's put a time frame on me because he knows I tend to go long on things. But a lot to unpack here. We want to make sure we address the big rocks. But the great thing is, this is a series, and so we'll be able to touch on things here more at a high level, and then in subsequent episodes we'll be able to really do a deep dive on each of these individual components of physique. And so, one of the things that I want to focus on first is, what does physique mean? I think, we're assuming that people may know what we're talking about when we mention physique, but, if somebody says, yeah, I want to focus on physique development, what does that mean? Are there different levels of physique development that somebody can work to attain? So, Dre, would you mind talking a little bit about that for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even starting, if we take a step back, right, the most common thing you hear is, hey, I want to lose weight or I want to gain weight.
Mm-hmm.
And as an athlete or a trainer, the first thing you got to look at is, all right, well, what are you looking to do with your body fat or your body composition? And ultimately, how can we tie that into a physique goal? So, if you're a 100-pound person and you got 10% body fat, you can still be 100 pounds and have 30% body fat. So we really want to drill down into that body composition aspect of it. And how can we create the adaptations to harden up, improve your conditioning and your overall physique? And to Tony's earlier point, balancing that dichotomy of health and functional fitness, right, versus bodybuilding or any kind of really strict physique type of goal. That's going to be, one of the top priorities here. You don't want to get so one-dimensional that you lose that functionality, right? Or you start losing range of motion or flexibility. So these are all the things we try to consider. And I can kind of walk you through from a physique perspective, right? If you're a bikini athlete, figure fitness, bodybuilding, physique, these are all, different stages of development, we'll call it. Again, starting with body composition, building lean body mass, lean muscle tissue, and then being able to be efficient at burning body fat, improving aesthetics. So if you are looking to enhance your aesthetics and then potentially one day compete, some of the criteria for that would be looking at aspects like left to right symmetry, right? Top to bottom proportions, front to back proportions, all these different things, overall size, muscle separation, definition, all these things kind of factor into aesthetics. Now, of course, if you are just looking for general health and wellness, but you want to improve your physique and the way you look, not going to be as critical, but you still want to have that balance and that shape that you're looking for. And then kind of going hand in hand with that, as you start to burn that fat and you get in shape, we're going to be looking at cardiovascular performance. So that's another fundamental category that NASM, I think we can certainly speak to, right? Again, balancing the cardiovascular performance with also dialing it in and burning specifically body fat, not necessarily just overall calories, right?
Sure.
And then to Tony's earlier point, really identifying corrective muscle imbalances so that we can provide corrective exercise. And that's a big piece of it. In a normal training program, we would do that in order to promote just overall performance and function, avoid injuries, muscle imbalance, etc. For physique, we're doing that same principle, but we're also blending in an aspect for aesthetics, right? Mm-hmm. So if I've got a lagging muscle group, first of all, we need to identify what it is, which muscles are overactive that are overcompensating. And then we go through a similar process of, relaxing those overactive muscles and then building up or overworking the underactive or lagging muscle groups. So a little bit, kind of parallels our normal process, but it's more specific to a physique goal.
Yeah. It gives, symmetry a whole new meaning in the sense of, the aesthetic component. And
right.
When we talk about symmetry, traditionally, we're looking at either a strength imbalance or symmetry with strength, symmetry mm-hmm. with range of motion or mobility. And those are all very, very important as it relates to resilience and injury prevention, mitigating injury risk to a certain extent. But now we can add that other aspect, which is the look. And right. Some of these principles, they certainly apply. So if you have an asymmetry in mobility or an asymmetry in strength and muscle activation, then that would certainly affect your ability to develop those muscles that are involved right. in that asymmetry. So I think it really is something that's important to address. And Dre, would you say that that's something that that people kind of overlook, not necessarily the symmetry piece, but the influence of muscle balance, neurologically, muscle length tension relationships, as we refer to them, and kind of identify through our assessment process. Is that something that's typically overlooked in that regard with those looking to enhance their physique?
Absolutely. You know, I see so many different cookie cutter training programs, or maybe it's a diet program, and those things are good for just general overall fitness, right? Burning calories and being physically fit. But when you start to step into the arena of a physique athlete, or even just trying to improve your aesthetics, you have to really drill down a little deeper, right? We've got to look at all those things we just talked about with muscle imbalances, being able to isolate specific groups. Give you a clear example. When I first came from the powerlifting world, everything we do is with barbells for the most part, right? If you're deadlifting, if you're back squatting, if you're bench pressing heavy, if you're into strongman, you do a lot of similar things with log presses and Atlas stones. You don't get that really unilateral work and bilateral. You know, there's a place for each of them. But when you're looking to get into specifically bodybuilding, and symmetry is an important piece. You need to isolate, you know, your left side of your body and your right side. So there's just a lot more that goes into it to really develop and enhance the physique to get those proportions that you're looking for. And when I came over, I know my left side, it was kind of lagging. Everyone kind of has a lagging side, you'll notice, especially when you start to drop the body fat and you get in shape, you kind of see some of the imbalances, and it's amazing what you discover. So one of the big ways that I was able to overcome that was doing a lot more dumbbell work instead of barbells. You know, if I'm on machines, making decisions on when to work unilaterally versus bilaterally, and then even getting down into the science of it, working with a good chiropractor at the time who would give adjustments and help make sure that, you know, I'm not having any adhesions or pinched nerves that are limiting blood flow to one side of my body or the other. And it takes time. That's what bodybuilding is about, right? It's about developing that well-rounded physique that's aesthetically pleasing. Yeah.
No, I'm excited for you to go into that a little bit more as we get deeper into the series. Also, just talking about, you know, what is that ideal physique? I think it's going to be unique to each person. Obviously, if you end up working with a coach or a trainer, or if you end up being a coach working with somebody else, you know, that's something that you'll help to determine with them, along with them, and perhaps for them, or somebody for you if you're the one being trained and coached yourself. So, you know, as far as the sport goes, being a physique athlete versus maybe just training for an improved aesthetic, you know, what does the sport itself consist of? I know, you know, you were on our podcast a couple months ago now. I think it was in January with Rick. And it was a fantastic episode. And you started to get into some of this. You touched on quite a few of these things at a high level. But, you know, could you break down the sport for us? I mean, you're IFBB pro. What does that mean? You know, what are some of the different organizations or federations, rather? What are some of the different divisions that people can get involved in? Because I think, you know, individuals who are watching and maybe aren't as familiar, they may have a preconceived idea or assumption about what it means to be a physique athlete. But if we were to just go back, you know, to the previous slide and we see a picture of you side by side, one of you in board shorts, the other one in your pose.
Actually, let's pull that back up. That's actually a great talking point. It's this one, right? You
know, there's obviously they're both you, but they're both distinctly different versions of you. You're
if I go back 5 years before that, it's completely different yet. So I can definitely help break down the sport, right? There are levels to this thing, and just with any sport in general, but it's really fascinating. We'll kind of start with just looking at the different leagues that are out there, right? And what I've kind of seen just through experience is when I'm coaching people for that initial weight loss, right? I had one of my good friends, I'll shout him out here, Charles Hansen, Big Chuck. And we actually met through Quest Nutrition, working I think the Arnold or Olympia Expo. And Chuck was, 420 pounds when he started his weight loss journey. He's very tall too, so very big frame. And, you know, we got him down 100 pounds the first year. And then, once he got past that, it's like, all right, well, let's keep going with this. I think I might want to step on stage one day. Mm-hmm. And we kept going all through last year during the pandemic. Total weight loss was about 183 pounds. Wow. And that last 6-month stretch was to get him prepared to step on stage for an amateur NPC show, which he did and earned some hardware. Couldn't be more proud. And that's kind of the path I see. People lose the weight, they get in shape, and then they realize, hey, this is attainable. I want to step on stage. Now, when you get to that point, if you make that decision, all right, I want to start competing, there are a lot of different options, right? The most renowned being the league that I've competed in my whole career, which is the IFBB and NPC. NPC being National Physique Committee. That's the amateur league. So that's kind of the base level, right? You can do a local regional show, qualify for a national show if you place in the top 3 to 5. And then at the NPC national level, you can qualify to earn your pro card. And then it's kind of like starting all over again. Right now, you're a small fish in a really, really big pond. Yeah. And you have
that's a relative small fish. Right?
Everything's relative. So it's like starting over again. You've got veterans that have been in the sport, 10 to 15 years that you're trying to catch. And it's a lot of fun. But so you can take that pathway, right? NPC, and work your way up through the IFBB. And then ultimately your goal is to get to that Olympia level. Now, there are a lot of other organizations, much smaller in magnitude. Some that come to mind would be like Wbff is another great organization. A little bit different in the way that they put on shows, actually very entertaining, and their athletes also look amazing. So it's another great organization. And then there's other ones like NSL and a lot of smaller, we'll call them natural or regional leagues. They don't have quite the amount of competitors. So for me, I was always attracted to what's the heaviest competition, right? I want to test myself against the best and the most people. Mm-hmm. And so that's what kind of attracted me down NPC and IFBB.
Okay.
So that's kind of in a nutshell what the organizations themselves look like. And then again, just the different tiers within them to get to that pro and then ultimately Mr. Olympia level.
Okay. Awesome. And so NPC, IFBB, in that, so let's say somebody decides they want to step on stage, they want to enter a show, a local or regional show. What divisions are there? What options are there for individuals? And maybe there's too many to shout out all of them or talk about all of them. But what are some of the options that people can look into if they don't necessarily want to get as big as they can? Maybe they want, they're not looking to put on maximum lean body mass, but are there other options for people who maybe just want to improve their physique and achieve a certain look that's not quite to the professional bodybuilding level?
Yeah, it's a great question. And here's the cool thing about the sport is the way that it's evolved over the last 10 to 15 years. There's a division or a category for nearly everybody, right? If you think back to the 90s or early 2000s, when you think bodybuilders, you kind of had to have the right genetic makeup to become a mass monster, right? The big guys, or if you're a woman, you had to be very heavily muscled, very dense, hard conditioning to be able to be competitive. Since then, we've come out with all the divisions that are more attainable for the average athlete. I don't want to say average because they're still phenomenal, but we'll say people that don't have a goal or don't have the genetic makeup to become extremely massive, right? So we've got men's and women's physique. And now you've also got classic physique in the men's division, which is my current division. So when you see the board shorts, that was men's physique.
Okay.
That was the first, other than the 212 bodybuilding, that was the first smaller division, we'll call it, in men's fitness. And now you've got, if you look at that second picture, classic physique, where you can put on more mass, you can get a little bit harder, but you're still not, you're not going to blow up to a Ronnie Coleman level. By the way, most people can't do that. That's 1% of 1% of people.
Now, sure, you mentioned Ronnie Coleman. So classic physique. If you had to kind of give an example of a classic physique, would that be like Frank Zane or is that
actually? That's a great question, Tony. So Frank Zane, one of my all-time favorites. Frank would actually be more of a. I'd put him in a men's physique division.
Okay, gotcha.
Men's physique today, Now, when men's physique first started, nowhere near the level of a Frank Zane.
Okay.
But today, because you got to think, right, even when I started in 2011, 2012, you're training hard, you're dieting hard, you're building muscle, you're getting denser. Over 4, 5, 6, 7 years, inherently, your body is just going to grow, right? Yeah. And so men's physique, where it was when it started, is nothing like it is today. I would say all the guys that I started with that are still doing men's physique, everybody's 20 pounds heavier today, right?
Really? Yeah.
It's just the natural progression of training for that many years. So I would say Zane would be more of like a men's physique professional, you know, like Olympia level athlete today. Whereas guys like, let's take a Franco Columbu, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Serge Nubret, these guys would be really, really good classic physique athletes today.
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's the beauty of it, right? So same thing with the women. I've had a lot of professional and amateur female friends that have started in the Bikini Division, which is more, more of your model or beach body type of division. And I think it's downplayed because people assume, oh, well, they don't carry as much muscle, they don't have to train as hard. Completely false. These girls are training their butts off to get in that kind of condition and hold that look. So you got to remember, it requires the same amount of discipline with dieting. And it also requires a lot of cardio, a lot of training, and then trying to create these adaptations to achieve that physique and play by the rules, right? There's certain rules and criteria that you're scored against. So that's what you're ultimately trying to tailor or mold your body around is that ideal physique for that division. Yeah.
Awesome. So, so is that what we're looking at then, is physique, classic, and then
212 bodybuilding, and then open bodybuilding. So that's kind of from smallest to biggest. And then if we go on the women's side, you'd have, and it varies by federation, but if you look at NPC, IFBB, there's bikini, figure. Those are kind of the traditional ones. As of last year, 2020, they've now added the wellness division, which is kind of women that are proportioned a little bit more bottom heavy, but you still have to have quality muscle and be very feminine, right? So that's kind of that in-between division. And then you've got women's physique and then women's bodybuilding.
Okay. Great. So a lot of options. I mean,
a lot of options today.
You decided to undertake this as a goal. There are quite a few options available, and that's a great thing. Is as the sport has evolved, it's open now to many more people, I think, and the idea of what's attainable and what's achievable is I've been in fitness 22 years, and I remember when I started as a trainer, I had many friends who were into bodybuilding and competing, and it only meant a couple things, right? There weren't too many options, and so it's great that there are more categories or divisions available to people now who want to put in the work and they want to achieve a certain look, but it may not be quite to the pro or mass monster level, if you will.
Right.
So fantastic. So in terms of stepping on a stage, we'll get into goal setting. That'll be our next episode. We'll focus on, how do you begin this journey? And part of that is goal setting. But if whether you step on a stage or not, the principles are fairly universal, right? I mean, if you're looking to get in peak condition to get on stage and compete for at a particular event or show versus getting your best body for a particular season or a particular event in your life, it's going to be very similar. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at any type of goal, right, we try to set those SMART goals, right? The SMART, specific, attainable, measurable, realistic, timely. All those things factor into a goal, no matter if you're a competitor, you're at work, or you're just trying to lose 10 pounds, right? So it kind of starts there. But then to just build outwards, the consistency has been the one thing that's always kept me grounded. And, out of the dozens and dozens of athletes that I've coached, it's really the ones that are consistently putting in the work, staying disciplined with their diet, staying disciplined with their cardio or their training, And then you've got to be flexible enough to pivot around things and keep yourself motivated, right? There's going to be obstacles that come up. You're going to have to travel for work. Your kids are going to be sick. You're going to have to, stay home from work and miss the gym that day. So you've got to be, I guess, flexible enough to really pivot and stay successful, and then look for those little wins, right? From week to week, day to day. When you break down that big goal into smaller sub goals, you got to give yourself those little victories. And that's really what keeps you hungry, and then hold yourself accountable. So one big thing in the, we'll call it the physique space, if you're working with a coach, is typically progress pictures. Mm-hmm. You'll see this with a lot of challenges. First Form, for instance, has the My Transformation Challenge. Yeah. You print out day 1, day 40, day 90, and you're checking in, right? And holding yourself accountable. And look, there's going to be times that you really bombed it this week, and you went out with your friends and had a good time, or you had a bad day, so you all your meals were off. And when you go back and look and hold yourself accountable and make the adjustments, all that feeds into hitting your goal. But I think the important part is by setting that goal, it keeps you A, structured, but then B, it gives you this extra motivation to execute, right? So I need to get from X to Y by when, right? When you define the when and you take the little steps every day to get from X to Y, it really just helps you attain those goals.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, I'm looking forward to breaking that down a little bit as we get through the series, everything from, what do you do from an assessment perspective? If, you're coaching somebody who has physique oriented goals, how do you develop a training program? The nutrition, when you look at the nutrition requirements, both from a macronutrient and micronutrient level, there's all these different things that you have to take into consideration. And then as you get towards competition, what does that prep look like? Mm-hmm. There's so many things that are involved that, people may not realize at first. Yeah. So if you're a coach, or an aspiring coach, what are some key things that I would need to know if I'm looking to get into coaching somebody who has a physique oriented goal, outside of, let's say, your traditional weight loss type client, what would be the first step? Do you recommend getting involved in that yourself as a coach before trying to lead others down that path? What are some of the key things that you want to keep in mind?
Yeah. And, this is something that comes with collecting a lot of data, right? So anyone who's an experienced coach, maybe you give some fitness and nutrition advice. It's always good if you've got back pocket, a registered dietitian that can help make sure that, you're taking into consideration some of those different things on the micro and macro nutrition level. But overall, if I'm an aspiring coach and I have a current athlete, or we'll call them current client, that decides, hey, I want to step on stage one day, kind of the first things that go through my mind are, what assessments do I need to even analyze this individual? And for me, that kind of starts with our NASM overhead squat assessment, right? Mm-hmm. From there, we're going to be identifying those over and underactive muscles, observing their body mechanics, and identifying those compensations, just getting a real good feel for what we're starting with, any corrective exercises that need to go into their plan. Mm-hmm. From there, I kind of go into a cardio assessment, right? You can do your basic VO2, step test, Rockport walk test, any of those, just to assess, again, their kind of jump off point from a cardio perspective. But then kind of the ongoing ones, we'll call it this continuum that happens throughout a full prep, would be body fat, right? So every 3-4 weeks, highly recommend, even if it's just you as a coach doing something as basic as a skin fold, right? So your body fat caliper, pinch test, we'll call it. Obviously, a little bit of variability depending on who's doing the test, but it gives you directionally good information on how their body's responding to the current diet and training and what adjustments to make. Mm-hmm. Now, when I'm competing myself, I like a little bit, I'm a very data-driven, very science-driven guy. I like to do things like BOD or the Dexa scans to give me a little bit more precise measurement. Yeah. they get a little expensive, but that's something as a coach or an athlete I would recommend.
Yeah, and we'll dive into those some of those nuances a little bit. As well, right? Yeah.
Right. So the other thing would be like your basic circumference measurements.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of tracking, your waistline, and there may be less. I don't want to say they're less useful, but we're looking at mostly aesthetics. So maybe it gives you some directional information on, okay, your left thigh is an inch smaller than your right thigh. We need to prioritize this in your training.
Sure.
And you know what I'm saying? It helps you identify some of those and balance your physique out. And then of course, weekly and sometime twice a week, physique check-ins. When we get really close to a competition date, I actually have my athletes check in on Sundays and Wednesdays, posed and unposed progress pictures, body weight. And then we kind of go through, how was your week? On a scale of 1 to 10, how was your diet? Did you miss any meals? How many minutes of cardio did you execute? And we take that information and we use it to kind of predict where we're going in the next week.
Yeah.
So those are we'll call it the continuum of physique check-ins that you would have on a weekly basis. Perfect.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm looking forward to breaking that down in the series, kind of establishing that blueprint, if you will.
Yeah.
If you're looking to coach somebody, I think just keep tuning in.
Absolutely.
Right.
Hey, as Tony mentioned too, in even between episodes, feel free to reach out to either of us with any questions or things that you want us to highlight on the next episodes.
Yeah, no doubt. And we'll kind of finish up with this. For aspiring competitors, what are some of the key things that they should just start to think about? If they feel like going down this path. I mean, what does undertaking a commitment like this look like that may be a little bit different from your traditional fitness or wellness oriented goal? You and I have talked a bit about some of the things, in terms of time, the time commitment, the training, the nutrition, the nutritional elements, mindset, budget. I mean, and then how do you factor all that in within your current lifestyle and demographics? So, what are some things that we can touch on briefly, and that obviously we'll get into in more detail down the line?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you my personal number one recommendation. Have fun. When you have fun and you enjoy it, you fall in love with the process of reaching your goals, anything is possible. So that's rule number one. Make sure whatever you're doing, you're having fun. You got to do it for the right reasons. But all the things that Tony mentioned, right, from budget considerations, these are real things, right? Coming out of this pandemic, there's a lot of people that, may have been out of work last year, and I've had a lot of my clients actually that were struggling to afford things like, dietary supplements, vitamins or protein or a gym membership. Gyms were closed down. So all those things kind of feed into it. But again, just getting creative, working with a solid coach and or a registered dietitian to handle the nutrition piece. I think those are kind of your basic fundamentals. You need that external feedback, and you've got to have somebody to be your corner man, right? I mean, if you think about
it too.
Yeah. And because I'll be honest, people think, I've done, 25 to 30 shows, 20 of those being professional shows. People think, well, why do you even need a coach at this point? I'm no different than anyone else. I'll tell you this, here's a difference. When you're training for a physique competition, you become very body dysmorphic. Okay. Your mind is trained to look for deficiencies. Right? You're not looking at all the great things about your body in that moment. You're trying to find the flaws or the deficiencies so that you can improve them. And that's why you need that external feedback for a coach to tell you if you're on pace, how are you pacing against plan? And, what adjustments do we need to make? Because after a certain point, you really can't read your own body. Yeah. You get all the pictures in the world, and your eyes are drawn to the little, flaws that maybe no one else will see.
Yeah. So you need somebody talking you up and, highlighting all the good stuff you're doing too.
Right. Or straightening you out. There might be times where you're like, oh man, I had a great week. And your coach is like, no, you're off. We're going to have to add 10 minutes of cardio every day and pull back your carbs. So that's why you need that. It's really hard to self-analyze and step outside your own body. But then other things that we'll cover in the coming series will be, I want this to be real life, right? When we talk about traveling on prep, if you've got a job like me, right, my normal W-2 day job, I have to travel a couple times a month and packing all your meals in your little ISO bag and eating every 2.5 hours. What you're trying to do is make sure that you get a constant level of nutrition, right? You're not missing meals or spiking your glucose and insulin throughout the day. That's a challenge. I work in a executive level role where, we work with, we have to report up to ownership, for instance, and these are really formal meetings. It's difficult to bring food into. So you got to get creative with this stuff. And I think we'll talk about that piece maybe on the micronutrition segment. And then other considerations. So different age groups, different gender groups. If you're pre or postnatal for women, I think there's a lot of different considerations that need thought and experience if you're an aspiring competitor. And then the last thing I'll kind of leave you with on that note is how to identify and when appropriate to use, like we'll call it fad dieting, right? We hear keto diet, Atkins diet, carb cycling, intermittent fasting, paleo, red meat diet. There's all these fads, and I'll tell you this, there's a time and a place for every one of them. But understanding when it's appropriate and for who, that's going to be the difficult part as a coach and as an athlete. So that's something we kind of work hand in hand on. If I'm working with an athlete, we keep all those tools in our toolbox, and there are certain times you might need to use them.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Well, I think that does shed a little more light on, just some of the considerations that have to be taken when you're looking to get into something like this and tackling a goal or an objective like this. So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting into that. Obviously, those strategies for success and how to stay on track when life hits you in the face.
Yep.
How do you plan for that? How do you account for that? And still, keep your eye on the prize, so to speak, and keep trending and tracking toward it. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I think, we've covered a lot for today as far as the fundamentals are concerned. And, today really the intention was just to preview the series, talk about, what does it mean to be a physique athlete and, train to enhance your body composition and your aesthetic, and, really set the table for the rest of the series, which will be ongoing. We're shooting for an episode every other week, which will give us some time between episodes to solicit feedback, provide other content related to physique development, whether it's around training, nutrition, mindset, goal setting, whatever. The sky's the limit. That's where we'll really look to you, our audience, to provide us with what we should be talking about as well. We can make assumptions about what we think you want to learn about, but the best thing is for you to tell us what you want to learn about. And so in our next episode, really we're gonna start with beginning your physique journey. Where do we begin? So using that SMART goal setting framework, in order to figure out where you're going, you have to know where you're starting from, and the plan and everything you have to do is in between those 2 points. And so we'll talk about, all right, look, you want to undertake this as an athlete, or if you're a coach and you're working with an aspiring physique athlete, where do you start? What do you do? What are the things that you have to consider and address to get somebody started on the right path? And, from there, Dre, you mentioned it a little bit, but we'll get into specific assessments related, more physical assessments, I would say. We'll get into nutrition, micronutrition considerations, and then training will be the big one. As you're looking to develop a certain look and certain proportions, develop certain muscle groups, what does it take from a training perspective? How do you design a program around those things? I'm excited to get into all that. If you're training hard and you're an athlete, most athletes have aches and pains, especially as you're looking to put on muscle. So, what do you do in that sense? How do you modify your training? What are some strategies using our NASM corrective exercise continuum that you might be able to employ to work around those things or address some of the underlying causes? We've got just so much we're going to cover I just can't wait. So I'm excited for everyone to learn from you throughout this process. And I think with that, I know you did get a couple questions, and some of the questions I think will definitely cover the topics in greater detail in some of our subsequent episodes. But do you want to address any of those questions you received over the last week or so before we head out?
Yeah, I can kind of speak to them at a high level. And as you said, we can drill down and do a deep dive on them in those subsequent episodes. One of them was how many weight training days versus cardio sessions for men over 35. I would start that with, kind of depends on your goal, but just general rule of thumb, I like to aim for, 3 to 4 days of, let's say 25 to 30 minutes of cardio. And then if you're active and you're healthy, you're looking to stay in good shape, maybe build a little muscle, 3 to 5 lifting sessions a week, right? And normally, if you're starting out with 3 days a week, for instance, you're probably doing things like vertical loads. You're doing total body workouts to try and hit every muscle group and, burn a lot of calories and stay functional. Of course, as we shift into things like this for physique, then we start to break out those training splits a little bit more specific to each muscle group and try to get a little bit more work in.
Yeah.
And as far as the cardio, I think another question was fasted cardio, pre or post workout. Really good question, right? So we'll definitely dive into that. I think we need to have
like a whole episode on that one, probably.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have a whole episode on cutting versus bulking, right?
Yeah.
So they're both under physique and bodybuilding, but there's going to be 2 completely different thought processes that go into building muscle, and you're going to inherently gain a little bit of fat with it during that phase. Versus the fat burning, dialing everything in phase. Yeah. So our cardio plan is going to adjust accordingly there. One of them is sodium on peak week. So that's a good one. That'll be in the micronutrition piece. And I'll kind of just give you a real high level 101, right? If you're an existing athlete, you already know what I'm talking about. On peak week, you kind of go through that early depletion phase with carbs. You increase your water and your cardio. Typically, you're trying to fully exhaust the body of glycogen, right? Glucose. And during that phase, because you're water loading, you don't want to get into a state where you are diluting the amount of sodium in your body. So you'll typically add a little bit of sodium with each meal. Maybe it's hot sauce or pickles or just some table salt during those high water loading days. And part of the purpose of that is also to make sure that you're uptaking nutrition in the small intestine and still getting all that food and that nutrients up into your body. And then, of course, balancing that's the health aspect of it, balancing that with the nutrition aspect as you start to taper off your water and dry out, we call it, and you reload the carbohydrates. Normally, you want to back off that sodium and keep it pretty low. You want to moderate that. And the reason for that is so that you don't hold subcutaneous water heading into a competition. In that kind of 12 to 24 hours out, if you're a big guy, you carry a lot of muscle, you probably want a good pump on stage. So then in that short time frame right before the stage, normally guys will have a big, a higher sodium meal, we'll call it. So we'll talk more about that on the macronutrition, micronutrition piece. And then I believe the last question we had roll in was really lifting for strength versus hypertrophy. And as Tony mentioned, that'll really go into detail during the training segment. But just to give you guys an idea, I actually did an episode with, or not an episode, but more of a blog type of article. And I think it's it's an American Fitness magazine that NASM does, Tony.
Yeah. We can link out to that too. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. So this was, I want to say December 2019, myself and Megan McCullough, one of my good friends, also an NASM master trainer. We both had some different pieces on there on our training. And I spoke to this exact point of how I kind of cycle through the phases, right? For me, there's really we'll call it the deloading phase after competition. I revert back to that phase 1, phase 2 kind of strength, endurance, and stabilization phases.
Yep.
When I'm really on, right, and I'm building muscle or I'm cutting into a show, it's primarily higher volume, looking for, that phase 3 in the OPT model, the hypertrophy phase, right, the pump. You're trying to shuttle as much oxygenated blood and nutrients into the muscle as possible so that you can promote the muscle growth. And, there are specific times when I'll go into a strength or a power phase, but for 75% of the time, I'm going to stay in that phase 3. So just to give you guys kind of a teaser on what's to come in those deep dives.
Yeah, and I'm excited for that too, because I think there are a variety of different ways that we can use that OPT framework to and periodized format, programming format, as somebody is working to either put on maximum muscle during a bulking phase, or as they start prepping and start cutting, trying to cut body fat.
Yep.
And so, it all comes down to planning and goal setting, right? If you understand, what your target date is, and you kind of plan backwards, you can get a better sense of what phases you're going to use and when, and within each of those phases, what those different cycles of training look like. Because there is value and there is benefit to all of them if they're used appropriately and if you follow the recommended variables. And what's great, we've had Brad Schoenfeld on. I know Rick has had him on as a guest, but the research on hypertrophy, there's more and more research coming out in terms of how you can train to maximize hypertrophy, and there's a lot of different opportunities to get your muscle to develop muscle and develop hypertrophy. And that's the great thing is within the different phases of the model, you can leverage those different variables and all of them can in some form or fashion help you put on more lean body mass. So
and it all ties together. When you talk about hypertrophy from a diet standpoint, right? When you add things like sodium and carbs, you add a vasodilator, let's say with your pre-workout, these things all enhance the pump, right? So there's so many different ways to skin a cat, we'll call it, but really all of these aspects we're talking about, they all tie together and help you attain that goal.
Yeah, can't wait. Well, let's wrap it up here. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below. Where to find us? You can find Andre Adams at Andre Adams _official. There is no space. That was a typo on my part. It's Andre Adams _official. So that's his Instagram. If you're not following him already, please follow him. And NASM, you can find us at NASM _fitness. Check out our website, nasm.org, YouTube, and then we've got a variety of different podcasts. You can find those wherever you listen to podcasts. So with that, look forward to everyone's feedback and comments to help us figure out, what we should focus on next. We have a general idea, as we talked about a few minutes ago, but we'd love to hear from you and make sure that we're touching on the things that you want to know about as it relates to physique development. So Andre, it's always a pleasure, but thank you for your time and your expertise. Can't wait for the rest of the series and to work with you more on this.
Likewise, Tony, and thank everyone for tuning in. And you don't want to miss these next episodes. We might even have some special guests, so definitely check them out and follow us on social media for some of these upcoming series.
Awesome. Yes, thanks everyone. See you next time.